folks, Bob with News with Views, again talking about geostrategic opportunities. Here I'm going to coin a phrase by Aristotle, which is sum of the parts is greater than the whole. And here, this has got to do with what's happened in Europe with Brexit, folks. When it was one, Britain was getting subsumed in this whole European Union identity. India found its openings to be limited. Now having split, the power of two will be behind our back. And both of them now, whether it's the United Kingdom, where we can use all the entire footprint of colonialism as a base for our network, and we have the same English language, we have the same connect in terms of law, we have same connects in terms of defense structures, and the whole bit, right? And Europe itself also, sum of the parts is greater than the whole. European Union as a whole is a problematic area because it's driven by Germany and Germany's linkage, financial and economic linkage with China, and the fact that some of its companies, like big companies like Daimler and Siemens and BMW, want greater control over their assets in China, and hence it's been driving. Germany has been the driving force to create this investment agreement between the European Union and China. However, that seems to not certainly have many guys who are backing out, especially France and Poland. And especially now with the incoming Biden, you're going to find a lot more people coming out of the woodwork in Europe which don't want this agreement, and that plays into India's hand. And as what does C. Raja Mohan write? India's new Europolitics. Delhi now sees European powers as natural partners in constructing a durable balance of power in Indo-Pacific. What does it say? Integrating Europe into India's new strategic calculus ought to be a major objective in 2021. Three recent developments underline Delhi's changing strategic perception of Europe. One is India's support for France's membership of the IOR. Second, India's backing of for a larger European role in the Indo-Pacific. Delhi has welcomed the interest of Germany and Netherlands in building a new geopolitical architecture in Indo-Pacific. Third, security cooperation in the Indo-Pacific is also emerging as an important theme in the plans to work out a decade-long roadmap to transform the partnership between Delhi and London, which is in throes of separating. So that's it. So London's moving towards the same construct, and so is Europe, right? Delhi now sees European powers individually as well as collectively through the European Union as natural partners in constructing a durable balance of powers in the Indo-Pacific. Right. Communist China, with its special sensitivity to inter-imperial contradictions, invested massive political and diplomatic effort to cultivate European political classes and economic elites. That began to pay off handsomely. India, in contrast, appeared rather indifferent to Europe, and Europe has a lot to blame, right? Because Europe really did not live up to its economic and geopolitical heft because it was riding on the back of the United States, whether it was in Asia, Southeast Asia, whether it was any other parts of Asia, whether it was the Middle East, right? It's a lot of it. I think it's the blame goes squarely on the European Union. France has been an exception. Through the 1990s, in the name of promoting a multipolar world, Paris had reached out to Delhi then. India's partnership with France now has a strong regional anchor, the Indo-Pacific France, which with its territories in the Western Indian Ocean and the South Pacific, as well as a historic naval presence, was quick to see the challenge rising from China, right? European ability to project military power in the Indo-Pacific is limited. But in combination with Asian democracies, Europe can certainly make a difference. It can mobilize massive economic resources for sustainable development of regional infrastructure, wield political influence, and leverage its significant soft power to shape the Indo-Pacific discourse. Above all, it can significantly boost India's own comprehensive national power. A strong coalition of Asia and European middle powers must now be an indispensable element of geopolitics of the East. Such a coalition can't be built overnight, but Delhi could push for a solid start in 2021. And here is what you see where the French are coming together, right? First one, India, France, Rafales to join war games on January 19th, and in a slap on Pakistan's face, this is going to be held in the Thar Desert, which may not. I think exercise with the U.S. Air Force would have carried more geopolitical meanings, but this also is an important role there. And while Macron seeks an enlightened Islam, what does Modi say? PM assures Macron of support against terror. The two leaders expressed satisfaction at the depth and strength that the India-France strategic partnership has acquired in recent years and agreed to continue working closely together in the post-COVID-19 era, the statement said. So here, folks, France is India's real ally in Europe. We've got two events that I've spoken about. We talked about new sheriff in town. We've just spoken of Brexit, some of the parts, and now the big earthquake that's happening is the Middle East, driven by obviously the Abrahamic Accord. And look at what that Abrahamic Accord has done there, right? A new playground, Dubai, Israelis find parties Jewish rights. This is an unbelievable image that we are seeing in Dubai today, and probably in the other two countries that have signed up on this deal, right? And Kushner continues, right? Kushner signs accords in Morocco. Mr. Kushner is also trying to broker a difficult deal to end a rift between Qatar and its regional rivals that has hampered US efforts to isolate Iran. And I think Qatar is also going to fall in their lap, right? US officials expressed confidence the next administration was unlikely to roll back many of the Trump administration's deals, such as backing Morocco's claim to Western Africa, and neither will, I think, Biden is going to be able to do much about these accords that have been signed. But things that are happening there might give it a different twist, right? Why? Because Israeli government collapses, forcing a fourth election in 2 years, because this Abrahamic Accord is driven essentially by Benjamin Netanyahu. Question is, who is going to come to power again? Israel faces another election after Knesset is dissolved, okay? But because of the flux in the United States, and because the United States is pulling out all its troops, you've got having problems in Somalia, but there is a lot of havoc now getting created as people try to take positions before the new administration comes in. Here's one of them. Attack on Assad troops fuels fears of ISIS resurgence. Blast at Yemen city airport kills 22. City of Aden on Wednesday, shortly after a plane carrying the newly formed cabinet landed there, security officials said. Saudi-led coalition then strikes at Yemen capital after attacks on Aden blamed on Houthis. The other people that are going to be in play in deciding what happens in the Middle East is this: fissures in West Asia. This is what I had said earlier. When the US-Israeli deal was announced, the two Middle Eastern countries that most vociferously condemned it were Turkey and Iran, while Iran's position is consistent with its policies and informed by the already intense tension between it and the Arab states and Israel. Turkey's anger at the UAE requires closer analysis, as it's a factor of the growing and relatively underreported regional rivalry between Turkey and the UAE. This is going to be a huge play, folks. India is on the right side, in my opinion. You already had Nirvana go to Saudi Arabia. You had Jaishankar just recently go to Qatar and Oman. And I think India is in full play in the Middle East and in control, right? He says UAE and Turkey confront each other in a various of theaters as the former tries to stymie Turkish plans at every opportunity. And India should give the UAE all the possible assist, and I think it's probably doing so. But let's extend this Middle East to Gadar and what China is up to, because actually, if you remember historically, Gadar was offered to India earlier, but India refused it. Nehru refused it. But what's happening with China? China seeks additional guarantees before sanctioning $6 billion loan for rail project in Pakistan. China has sought additional guarantee. China has also proposed a mix of commercial and concessional loans to fund the rail project, going against Islamabad's wishes of cheaper lending. The Chinese authorities have proposed that, keeping in view the financial situation in Pakistan, so also the conditions laid down by the G20 regulations for debt suspension, the government of Pakistan may provide additional guarantee mechanism for the loan other than sovereign loan for the ML1 project, according to the official privy to the government. So here goes parts of Pakistan, folks. Get ready. These guys, tough Pathans, tough Pakistani Punjabis. You're losing your land, you're losing your soul, folks. When will you wake up? With the Pak court here, Pakistan court halts Gadar fence plan after outcry. China is going to run up against a wall here, folks. Good for us. Let's play the cards right, especially in Balochistan. Now, question is, how does India play this game with these three major events that are happening in the world, major changes that are going to be on us, and the pandemic, which is critically going to define geopolitics going into into 2021. What does Jayant Sinha and Sameer Saran write? Gated globalization, which I equate to what I call bubbles between trusted companies. He says COVID-19 vaccines are coming. The skepticism over the vaccines from China and Russia shows that trust is the operating word in the post-pandemic era, and it's not limited to the choice of vaccines. What is it? We will see the rise of a new world order driven by national interests, reliability of partners, and of course, economic factors. India has to use a gated globalization framework to negotiate this change. A new great game is underway. In the Indo-Pacific, where the Quad is emerging, the Middle East is in deep churn as Israel and Arabs discover Abrahamic commonalities. Europe is caught in a struggle to retain its values amid the diversity it has acquired over the years. Gated globalization has no place for parlor games like non-alignment. It will test the tensile strength of strategic autonomy. Beyond security, like everybody else, India has to make partnership choices on trade, capital flows, and the movement of labor. Finally, technology flows and standards will also define gated communities. The internet is already split between China and everyone else, and India needs to join the right community. China's massive digital surveillance apparatus needs to be cut down. Amid these rapidly changing post-pandemic realities, India has to be swift in identifying partners whom it can trust and who will help protect and further its national interests. Ambiguity, lethargy, and posturing will not do. Now, the father writes, Sham Saran, the new League of Nations, folks. Now, that's the father and son. But there are several paths ahead, several choices that beckon, except that there is no path to retrace our steps back to where we were before the pandemic struck. Because the world no longer exists. That world now no longer exists. Geopolitics has been transformed and power equations are being altered. There are a new set of winners and losers in the economic sweepstakes. Technological advancement will magnify these changes, and India will need to make difficult judgments about the world that is taking shape and find its space in a more complex and shifting geopolitical landscape. Most challenges the world faces are global, like the pandemic. They are inherent in globalization driven by rapid technological change. They include climate change, cybersecurity, space security, which are newer domains, but even extent challenges such as terrorism, drug trafficking, money laundering, which continue to exist. China will emerge in pole position in the geopolitics sweepstakes commencing 2021. The power gap with its main rival, the US, will shrink further. The power gap with India, its largest rival in Asia, will expand even more. India is already confronting a more aggressive and arrogant China on its borders. Okay. Despite a degree of pessimism about India's economic prospects, we may be located at a favorable geopolitical moment. This may appear counterintuitive thanks to concerns about China, aggressive posture across board, and its unilateral assertion of power. There is a significant pushback even from smaller countries, for example, in Southeast Asia and Africa. China's blatant weaponization of economic interdependence, such as we see in its punitive commercial action against Australia, has made its economic partners increasingly wary. India is seen as a potential credible countervailing power to resist China's ambitions. The world wants India to succeed because it's regarded as a benign power, wedded to a rule-based order. India can leverage this propitious moment to encourage a significant flow of capital, technology, and knowledge to accelerate its own modernization. Important stuff. And what is New Year, New Vision is what Cholia writes. It says, one of the saddest truths of the pandemic era is the authoritarian countries have little recourse for peaceful course correction. China, which fatally covered up the failed prevent the international spread of the coronavirus in late 2019, is under the vice-like grip of President Xi Jinping's unlimited executive power. The lack of transparency in Xi's model of one-party dictatorship is a glaring flaw which unleashed the pandemic on the world, folks. And remember that COVID-19's planetary diffusion is a reminder of the massive risk posed by allowing such a country to become dominant power in the world with few checks and balances. If future pandemics are to be limited and smaller countries are to be determine their own destinies, China has to be counterbalanced through coalitions of like-minded nations. Forgetting the origins of the coronavirus and allowing a China-driven global recovery and China-designed post-pandemic world order will leave us hapless victims of more infections, viruses, and neo-colonial bullying, folks. Jai Hind.